Hey, I'm here with Flash again. We're going to try to do some backing. Flash is going into what I call my level 3 training, which is movement. So many donkeys are very resistant to moving, and we have to work with them and show them that moving is a good thing. And they need to move off of light pressure, because sometimes there's going to be times when we want them to move out of the way. Maybe we want them to move off a toe they just stepped on. Maybe they're being pushy. They need to understand moving away. I usually start backing at the side because it's just easy to do when I'm leading, and they tend to start to mimic me at liberty. But if your donkey isn't mimicking you at liberty, or maybe they're just so-so or not very good at it, this level of the training I do will help you get your donkey moving. The donkey needs to move back from a cue if I'm standing on their side or in front, and even back. Just for basic handling, I like a donkey that will back up. Come on, Flash. Okay, there's several ways to start a backup. If they won't mimic me, I usually put pressure on the chest and see if they'll back. Back. And then I reward for the slightest try. Now, if you're not using treats, you would just release that pressure and maybe scratch them. It's going to take longer for them to put together what you're asking, but you can still do it that way and not use treats if you don't want to. So he stepped his hind foot back a little, and I popped and rewarded him for it. Boy, you back? Back? Good. Each time I ask him to move back, I'm going to ask for a little bit more. Just a little bit. Maybe I want 1.5 step, you know? And if your donkey won't move at all, just feel for a weight shift. Even reward them for a weight shift. When you feel the weight shift, pop or click and reward. Of course, release the pressure. Back. 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 Okay, that's pretty good. You know, sometimes it's easy for a donkey to do things at liberty. My donkeys will load all day long in the trailer at liberty, but when I ask them to load, they say no. So I have to train them to load with me. Sometimes they will mimic me, back up just fine. But when I actually put pressure on them and ask them to back up, sometimes they say no. So I have to train them to accept that pressure and do what I'm asking. So that's how I train back up at the side, moving back from pressure. Now eventually, and some of my donkeys can do this, eventually I don't want to put any pressure on them at all. I just want to move my hand and say back. That's all I want to do, and I want them to back up, and eventually they get that way. But it takes a lot of practice. It's actually pretty fun to train though. You want to make sure that you practice on both sides. Again, you don't want a one-sided donkey. Back. Back. Good boy. Okay, so he's getting that pretty good. Flash is a little resistant to pressure. He's actually better at backups, mimicking at liberty. And because it's his idea, right? When it's for sure my idea and I'm putting that pressure, you know, he immediately wants to press into me. And I've got to just be persistent, keep my hand there, and that just the slightest shift back or one step back, click and build on it. Right, buddy? Teaching from the front. Let me see if I can get him right. Come here. You back? Back. Okay, I hope you can see that good. From the front, I'll start teaching by just laying my hand on their nose and putting slight pressure back. It makes them tuck their head, and they usually start to move back. Much easier than if I jerk the halter under and hold it underneath. I know some people use, you know, you can use a chain, people use the rope halters and they pull back. I've just not found that as effective as just like pressing on their nose with my hand and asking them to move back and walking into them. And eventually what I want is, again, to be able to walk toward them, move my hand, and say back, and they back. 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 Back up from behind can be a little bit tricky, and I usually don't start doing that until they get really good at backing up from each side and backing up from the front, because by the time we get to that point where they're understanding the pressure of backing up from the front, backing up from the sides, by then they're starting to understand the voice cue of back. And that's what I want, because if I'm going to drive them, I want to be able to say back and then back. I don't want to put pressure on them if I don't have to. So the back up from behind will come at a later lesson. But that's how I get the back up started. Hope this is helpful, because donkeys do need to understand when we ask them to back up. Good boy, Flash.